Okay. Here we go. Right. Sorry. Let's try. Oh, done it again. It's frozen. Just doesn't like my PowerPoint. It's just frozen. That's annoying. Ah, there we go. Right. Okay. Off you go. Let's try again. Right.
Right. Okay. God speaks to Abraham, commanding him, "Go from your land, from your birthplace, and from your father's house, to the land which I will show you. There," God says, "he will be made into a great nation."
But I don't know what just happened there.
Nor do I.
Sorry.
Oh, there it's back again. No,
again.
it's not. No, that's the second. Right. Yes. Okay. There, God says he will be made into a great nation. Abram and his wife Sarai, accompanied by his nephew Lot, journey to the land of Canaan, where Abram builds an altar and continues to spread the message of a one God. A famine forces the first Jew to depart for Egypt, where beautiful Sarai is taken to Pharaoh's palace. Abram escapes death because they present themselves as brother and sister. A plague prevents the Egyptian king from touching her and convinces him to return her to Abram and to compensate the brother revealed as husband with gold, silver, and cattle. Back in the land of Canaan, Lot separates from Abram and settles in the evil city of Sodom, where he falls captive when the mighty armies of Chedorlaomer and his 3 allies conquer the 5 cities of the Sodom Valley. Abram sets out with a small band to rescue his nephew, defeats the 4 kings, and is blessed by Melchizedek, the king of Salem, Jerusalem.
One sec. Yeah.
God seals the covenant between the parts with Abram, in which the exile and persecution, galut, of the people of Israel is foretold, and the Holy Land is bequeathed to them as their eternal heritage. Still childless 10 years after their arrival in the land, Sarai tells Abram to marry her maidservant Hagar. Hagar conceives, becomes insolent towards her mistress, and then flees when Sarai treats her harshly. An angel convinces her to return and tells her that her son will father a populous nation. Ishmael is born in Abram's 86th year. 13 years later, God changes Abram's name to Abraham, father of multitudes, and Sarai's to Sarah, princess, and promises that a son will be born to them. This child, whom they should call Isaac, will stem the great nation with which God will establish his special bond. Abraham is commanded to circumcise him. Abraham is commanded to circumcise himself and his descendants as a sign of the covenant between me and you. Abraham immediately complies, circumcising himself and all the males of his household. Rabbi,
yes.
The fact that Isaac was called Isaac, wasn't that Sarah's suggestion rather than God's?
Well, no, she laughed, right? Because she laughed. Yeah.
But here it seems to suggest that it was God that said that they should call him Isaac.
No, it was. If you look, it says because she laughed, you will call him Yitzchak.
Yeah, but it says God promises that a son will be born to them from this child whom they should call Isaac. That suggests that God said, you will have a son who you should call Isaac.
I'm just looking it up.
That's what it suggests to me.
Yeah, I'm just looking it up. 1 second. In the Chumash.
Since I saw that and read that, I thought, oh, but wasn't that Sarah said they called it Isaac because she laughed?
I'm trying to find the actual original here. Come on.
I mean, I may very well be wrong.
Yeah, and just keep chattering amongst yourselves. I'm just looking it up. 1 sec. Oh, I could just get a Chumash off the shelf. I was like, looking online. This is silly. Should just get a Chumash from the shelf, right? Be much easier. Right, 1 second. Let me get a Chumash from the shelf. Okay.
Sorry.
No, you're quite right. You should look it up because I actually don't remember. I'm fairly sure it's Hashem's instruction, but let's have a look. Good question. It's next week's Cedric, of course, by Yeira. Wait 1 second. Nearly there.
Maybe right at the bottom. Oh. What is it? What is it? Against, do you want to know what it is first? No.
You're right. I thought it said that Hashem said because she laughed.
What does it actually say?
Wait 1 second. I have to go back. Oh. No, sorry, 1 second. I'll find it now. I think it's this week's Cedric. Oh yeah, here we go. Yeah. I'll find it now. Yeah, it's this week's Cedric, sorry, right? Hashem says, I can't find the bit where Sarah laughs. Says Avram fell on his face.
In the tent? She was hiding behind the door of the tent or something.
I don't know. It says that Avram fell on his face and laughed. He said, I'm 90 years old. I'm 100 years old. I'm 100 years old. And Sarah's 90. What? We're going to have a baby. And Hashem says, no, Sarah will give birth to a son. You will call him Yitzchak.
Oh,
yes.
So
Hashem originally says you will call him
yes.
Yitzchak. The way it is in next week's Cedric just says he was born, he was called Yitzchak. So, okay.
Yeah, apologies.
No problem.
I was wrong.
But interestingly, Rashi says on next week's Cedric that the naming of Yitzchak is because he'll bring joy. So, the way you learn it in Cheder as a kid, it's almost like, having a little dig. Oh, because you laughed, we'll call him, with funny boy sort of thing. No, it's actually a nice name because he will bring joy. Okay, right. So, question.
Apologies to everyone.
No worries. Everyone talks about influencers nowadays, right? Saw an unfortunate interview on, I don't like Piers Morgan massively, but he's a very good, quite no nonsense. So I saw an interview on YouTube with him with some guy called Muhammad Hijab, funny name, who's evidently a Muslim influencer who has millions of followers. And he was talking about Palestine and giving the predictable tripe about all the stuff. Anyway, Piers really gave him a run for his money. But anyway, so he's question. If you look throughout history, until this very day, who is the most influential man who ever lived? I'll give you a clue. It's not who you think it is. Well, it might be. I don't know. It's not the obvious names that come to mind.
Not Moshe.
No, not Moshe.
Right, so people say Moshe, or people say that they're Rebbe or right. Half the world's population or more are followers of Avram, of the Abrahamic faiths. What do they just call it? The Abram Accords, right? We talk about Judaism, Christianity, Islam basically revere Abram as their patriarch, as the monotheist, right? That's billions of people around the world, even today. Okay, I mean, they might not have a personal relationship with him, but he is a figurehead in their culture, in their lives, in their religions, right? He doesn't appear on lists of influencers. He's not, seen like Moshe or Joshua or, any of these people. He didn't have an empire. He didn't have an army, right? He wasn't he didn't do miracles. He wasn't a prophet. He didn't lead millions of people. Who were his disciples? His own child. And yet today, if you ask billions of people in the world, they identify as Abrahamic faiths, right? Founder of monotheism. He's not called the Tzaddik. We said last week, Noach is called the Tzaddik. Right? We're not told anything of his childhood, unlike Moshe, or his early life, very little. Right? All we know of Avram really is the end of last week's Sedra says that Terach gave birth to Avram. And then suddenly we find, right, this week's Sedra, let's read number 1. Who's like to read number 1?
No.
Volunteer?
That Hashem said to Abram, go forth from your native land and from your father's house to the land that I will show you.
Right? All we know about Avram is he's told to leave. Right? And what happens when he changes his name? By the way, I mean, people like to talk about how the Torah is true, right? What was his name changed from? Avram to Avraham. Okay. Anyone know what Hashem said when he changed his name? That's not what he said. Bless you. Right. let's have a look. Right. Who'd like to read number 2?
I'll read. And you shall no longer be called Abram, but your name shall be Abraham, for I make you the father of a multitude of nations.
Is it to do with Noah's son, Ham?
No, I don't think so. Oh, I don't know.
Does Abram mean father of the people, and Abraham mean father of many nations or many people?
So 1 second, it's gone mad. Sorry. 1 second. Can you still see that?
Yes.
Yes.
I don't know why the screen keeps going off. Sorry. Right. Avram, I don't know. That was his name. We're not told the meaning. Avraham, says the Torah. Av, father. I don't know about the Reish, but Ham is Hamon, like many nations. Avraham means the father of many, right?
Wouldn't Abram mean father of people?
I apologize in advance. This is probably slightly, but anyway, you know the joke about the priest who was on the train? So there's a priest on the train, and the elderly Jewish guy gets on, and he says, "Excuse me, you don't mind my asking?" He says, "But your collar's the wrong way round. Your collar's backwards." He says, "Yes, that's right." He says, "Why is your collar backwards?" So he says, "Well, the thing is, I'm a father." He says, the Jewish guy says, "I'm also a father, father, grandfather, great-grandfather. No, but I wear my shirt the right way around. Why is your collar the wrong way around?" So he says, "Yes, but I'm the father of many hundreds of people." And the Jewish guy says, "If you don't mind my saying so, maybe if you turn your trousers around instead, you might solve that problem." Anyway, sorry. Okay. How many nations in the world would you say? Christian nations, 1 Jewish nation. Muslim nations, right? Avram is the father of many nations. So there you go. Who was he? Why was he chosen for this role? So there's kind of different aspects of Avram we learn about. The first one is Avram the monotheist, right? Let's have a look at the Midrash, this famous story. This is the original version of the story, which you've probably heard in some form or another. Who's feeling like to read? I hope it's not too small.
Okay.
Go for it.
One time, a certain woman came carrying a dish of fine flour in her hand. She said to him, "Here, offer it before them." He arose, took a club in his hand, shattered all the idols, and placed the club in the hand of the largest among them. When his father came, he said to him, "Who did this to them?" He said to him, "I will not lie to you. A certain woman came carrying a dish of fine flour in her hand. She said to me, Here, offer it before them. I offered it before them. This one idol said, I shall eat first, and another one said, I shall eat first. This big idol, who was standing among them, got up, took the club, and shattered them. He, Terah, said to him, What, are you mocking me? Are they sentient at all? He said to him, Do your ears not hear what your mouth is saying?
Right. So I love that. This is a very modern day word, right? Sentient. Talk about artificial intelligence and sentient beings, right? So this is the famous story, right? You know, Avram, right? He sets up this scene where the idol smashed the other idol, and his father says, "What are you talking about? They've got no power." He says, "Right, touche." Yeah. So that's the first one. Do you remember, by the way, last year in this same share, probably this week, we looked at the issue of the fact, or maybe it was last week, Cedra, that Terach accompanied Avram on his journey. Oh, I think it's this week. Lech Lecha, that his father goes with him, and we looked at that, and we said, did his father go with him, even though his father was portrayed as this idolater, because out of love? Or I think we came up with the possibility that Terach had also started to come around to the monotheism as well. Do you remember? We discussed that. We looked at some of the sources. Yeah. So anyway, so you've got Avram as the, you know, the champion, proving his point about the idols and their total lack of whatever, the breaker of images. Right, he rebels against the pagan world of superstition. That's number one. Then there's a second one. There's Avram, the man who's on a journey. Let's see what happens. Who would like to read this? Also from the Midrash. He says he saw a palace that. I'll just give the context. He saw a palace on fire. Carry on.
I'll read it. I'm with you now. He wondered, is it possible that the palace lacks an owner? The owner of the palace looked out and said, I am the owner of the palace. So Abraham, our father, said, is it possible that the world lacks a ruler? God looked out and said to him, I am the ruler, the sovereign of the universe.
So this is his, you know, he looks at the palace. The story is evidently the palace was beautiful, but it was on fire. This is what the Midrash says. And he's looking like, where's the owner? Why aren't you putting out the flames? And the owner says, I am the owner of the palace. So why aren't you putting out the flames? So Avram looks at the world and says, is there no order to the world? Is there no ruler? And God says, I'm the ruler. And seems like this Midrash is kind of a paradigm for Tikkun Olam, that Hashem is saying that, and yet still Avram is called upon to be the one to fight injustice. So in the same way that he sees the burning palace, he can't understand why the owner isn't running to put out the fire. He sees the world. He says, can there not be some order to the world? Hashem says, I am the ruler of the world. There's a sort of, this seems to be the context of that Midrash. If you look at the longer Midrash, that you have to do the work of fighting the fires, as it were. So that's also Avram, the one who fights against injustice, the one who campaigns for Sodom and Gomorrah, right? You know, the one who, and finally, let's see what Maimonides has to say, the philosopher. Who'd like to read number 3?
Want me to read it?
Go on.
After he was weaned, while still an infant, Abraham's mind began to reflect. Day and night he thought and wondered, how is it possible that this celestial sphere should continuously be guiding the world and have no one to guide it and cause it to turn? For it cannot be that it turns itself. He had no teacher, no one to instruct him in anything. He was surrounded in Ur of the Chaldees.
Chaldees.
Yeah,
Chaldees.
I always prefer
By
the Hebrew,
foolish
which is
idolaters.
or kastim. It's much easier to say. Yeah.
Or what, sorry?
Kastim.
Or kastim. In English, it's always Ur of the Chaldees. I don't even know how you pronounce it. It's or kastim in Hebrew. Yeah.
Okay. His father and mother and the entire population worshipped idols, and he worshipped with them. But his mind was constantly active and reflective until he had attained the way of truth, found the correct line of thought, and knew that there is one God, he that guides the celestial spheres and created everything, and that among all that exists, there is no God beside him.
Okay, so we've got different facets of Avram. That, by the way, apparently is in line with philosophy that's seeing proving the existence of God by metaphysical argument. So we've got Avram, the sort of, trailblazer, the one who goes against goes against the zeitgeist and breaks the idols and whatever. We've got Avram, the sort of social warrior who sees the fire in the palace and says, why aren't you putting it out? And the sort of unspoken is, you have to bring justice and righteousness to the world. And then we've got Avram, the sort of philosopher who discovers God through sort of intellectual inquiry. Very nice. Are they mentioned in the Torah? Well, okay.
They are like at the beginning when we get introduced to Abraham, he was like, he lived in and they had the idols and his father. And
we're not, the story for some reason isn't explicit. So the answer is, the book of Joshua talks about it. Oh, before we do that, let's just look at this. So, I love Rabbi Sachs. He tells us people I've never heard of. Thorstein Veblen, don't know who he was, wrote an essay about the intellectual preeminence of the Jews. This is what he had to say. So this is Avram as the one who, smashes the idols, as it were, the trailblazer. Who'd like to read this? Any volunteers?
That wasn't until the 15th century.
I'll read it again if you like.
Go on, Iris. Yeah, we're back to you.
The Jew becomes a disturber of the intellectual peace, a wanderer in the intellectual's no man's land, seeking another place to rest, further along the road, somewhere over the horizon.
Well, this is Avram the Ivri meaning stands on the other side of the river, right? The one who stands against what everyone else is saying, who pushes the boundaries, right? That's the Avram that breaks the idols and says to his father, come on, seriously, look at the reality of what's going on here, the one who breaks the idols. We've got Avram as the one who, the social warrior. This is Einstein. We've quoted this before. Go on, who'd like to read Einstein? Pam?
In a minute, can I ask a question, Rabbi?
Yeah, or you can ask now if you speak to Mum. Sorry?
Shall I ask now?
Sure.
The piece that I read out about where I just wondered when was it discovered that the world was round? Because would Abraham have known that, or was that the Rambam's perspective because he rose later on?
Right, I see what you're saying when he writes about celestial spheres.
Very good question.
I don't know if he means literal spheres. I don't know if he means literal physical spheres or figurative spheres. Good question. I'm not sure if that's figurative or literal. I mean, there is this whole idea that our great rabbis knew things even before they were discovered. So, it's possible that early rabbis knew the earth was round. I don't know. It's a good question, actually. But I think it's talking perhaps more metaphorically. The celestial spheres, as in the celestial kind of arena, possibly.
Also, Rabbi, do you think it's something to do with the Rambam? I don't know. Can't remember when the Rambam lived. Is it because he knew the Rambam knew those things and used that sort of information as a way of expressing what Abraham might have thought?
Yeah, I think quite possibly, yes.
Maybe it was
someone.
Sorry, maybe it was because of the moon and the sun around.
Right.
And they could see that. He could see that, and that's what they used to worship, wasn't it?
Right. So I don't know, like nowadays, when I was a kid, people used to talk about the Flat Earth Society, you'd use it as a euphemism for you probably think the earth is flat as well, kind of thing. So it could well be euphemistic. I don't know, it's a good question. I think it was just his way of expressing it. So we've got Einstein, I'll read Einstein. The pursuit of knowledge for its own sake. An almost fanatical love of justice. We've come across this quote before, right? The love of justice. The desire for personal independence. These are the features of Jewish tradition that make me thank my stars that I belong to it, right? This justice. And finally, the philosophical, we don't have a quote for that, but the philosophical, we are a nation of philosophers who like to think about God, right? So you've got Avram as the trailblazer, the smashing the idols, Avram the social warrior, Avram the philosopher. Very nice. The Torah doesn't say any of that. Joshua talks about the first one. Let's see what Joshua says. Number 8. We haven't heard from the Bendens for a while. Anybody want to read?
Yes, you have.
Oh, we have? Okay.
Again.
Well, do you want to read again?
Yeah. Then Joshua said to all the people, thus said the Eternal, the God of Israel, in olden times your ancestors Terah, father of Abraham and father of Noah, lived beyond the Euphrates and worshipped other gods.
Right. So that's the only reference we find, right? I think this is we say in the Haggadah, yeah? The palace and the flames, I mean, we do have a social justice story. It's this week's Sedra, right? With Sodom and Gomorrah, where what's my next quote? Let's see. I haven't quoted it here, but right, what does Avram say? Avram says to God, shall the judge of the earth not do justice? Right? So he challenges God, he shows his justice. But all of these things are conjecture. It's midrash, it's stories. What does the Torah actually say about Avram? So let's have a look, because really there's only one thing it says. Who would like to read this one? I won't make the mistake of saying we haven't heard from someone in a while, in case I get it wrong. Right. Who haven't we heard from in a while? Lisa,
Oh,
you on?
okay,
Do you want to-
I'll read if you like.
Yeah, I am. I'm here. Hi.
Oh, hi,
Oh.
Lisa. Would you like to read?
Have you got
Oh,
the
I'd
visuals?
love to read, please.
Right, go for it. Number 9. It should be on the screen, hopefully.
Yeah. For I have singled him out, that he may instruct his children and his posterity to keep the way of Hashem by doing what is just and right, in order that Hashem may bring about for Abraham what has been promised him.
Right, we've had this quote before. The key is that he will instruct his children. He's Avram, the father, the Av, father of his own children, father of humanity. Right? What do you notice? If you were asked to describe all the events of Avram's life, right? What is it? He's waiting for a child, the birth of Ishmael, the tension with Sarah and Hagar, the birth of Yitzchak, the binding of Yitzchak. And what does it all have in common? It's all about children. His father, his role as a father, right? What do we read on Rosh Hashanah? The first day of Rosh Hashanah, the anniversary of creation, we read about mothers and sons. We read about Sarah, we read about Hannah in the Haftarah and birth, right? If you want to understand the universe, you understand the birth of a child. So Avram, he's a father. He's the father of mankind. He's the father of his children. And actually, if you want a paradigm, we talk about different paradigms for our relationship with God. We talk about the husband and wife, but we've got this idea, the miracle of childbirth. It's the miracle of creativity, the miracle of renewal, the miracle of life. Let's see what the nuns had to say in a book called At the Entrance to the Garden of Eden. There's a chap called Yossi Klein Halevi. He wrote a book about Christians and Muslims in the land of Israel. And this is what Maria Theresa, a nun, had to say to him about the Jewish community. Let's see their perception. Who'd like to read the nun?
I'll read about the nuns.
Go on.
The rebel. I watch the families who visit here on weekends, how the parents behave towards their children, speaking to them with patience and encouraging them to ask intelligent questions. It's an example to the whole world. The strength of this people is the love of parents for their children, not just the mothers, but also the fathers. A Jewish child has 2 mothers.
Right, not in the modern sense, yeah? But this is the paradigm of Jewish life is the parent-child role. Many years ago, somebody said to me, I'll take the compliment. It's not always true, but someone said to me many years ago. They said, one of my congregants has at the time 2, I think, children in their 20s. Said, I don't think he quite used the word envy, but he said, we look at you and your children. They're excited when you come home, and they're excited to do family stuff. He said, our kids, they only ever talk to us when they want money, and they don't want to go on holiday with us, and Huh? Yeah, Blim says the kids were smaller then, but it's it's a special thing, that bond, that I think generally it's something we often talk about in the Jewish community. People still go on holiday with their parents, people still do Friday night dinner with their parents. Most Jewish parents know where their children are, on a given night of the week. The family is very central. So anyway, this is what this nun said, that not they have literally 2 mothers, but that basically that both parents are fully engaged in their lives. This is Avram the parent, Avram the nurturing parent, above and beyond everything else. So all the other facets of him, it's interesting. Richard Dawkins referred to the urge to reproduce as the selfish gene, right? Because I mean, this thing now people say, I don't have children because, you know, overpopulation, the selfish gene that, you know, you just want to preserve your own legacy. But of course, we see it very differently. We see it as, you know, the next generation, and we see the importance of children. We put children at the center of everything that we do, whether it's Avram the father or Sarah the mother. Let's see Rabbi Sachs's conclusion. Who would like to be Rabbi Sachs today? Well, read Rabbi Sachs anyway.
I'll read if you like.
Right.
Judaism takes what is natural and sacrifices it, what is physical and invests it in spirituality, what is elsewhere considered normal and seen as a miracle. What Darwin saw was the urge to reproduce, what Richard Dawkins called a selfish gene, is for Judaism high religious art, full of drama and beauty. Abraham the father and Sarah the mother are enduring roles, models for parenthood as God's gift to our highest vocation.
All right, so yes, we've got Avram's fashion idols, we've got Avram the social warrior, we've got Avram the philosopher, but ultimately, what makes him the most influential man that ever lived? Right? What does God say? He says, Abraham Goyim, you'll be the father of many nations. Father being the operative word. It's that role, it's that paradigm that we celebrate above all. Perhaps we, unfortunately, nowadays cheapen parenthood a lot, which is a real shame, because it's a very high quality thing that should be celebrated. I'm sure I've told the story before. Rabbi Manis Friedman is a rabbi in the States, quite a sought after speaker. So somebody once challenged him, said, well, Rabbi, you know, you claim to be so forward thinking. Does your wife work outside the home? What does your wife do? So he says, my wife runs a shelter for unwanted children. So she has at any given time, she has 9 or 10 children. She feeds them, bathes them, clothes them, makes sure that they get to school. They said, wow, that's incredible. He says, just one problem. It's our children. And the irony that if you would do it for someone else, it would be highly valued. But if you do it for your own self, it's not valued enough, right? The tax system still doesn't value looking after your own children, right? Or, you know, grandparents looking after grandchildren. Right? It's a sad fact. It's a very beautiful thing. Anyway, there we go. Right. Any questions? I'm fascinated by the idea that Avram is the most influential person ever lived. I never really thought about it. It's true. The more than probably a large proportion of the world's population, obviously it's a bit like someone saying, you know, I'm a big fan of Rabbi Sachs. It doesn't mean that you follow every single one of his teachings, but the idea that Avram is a key figure, the Abrahamic faiths, the Abraham Accords is mind-blowing. It's billions of people, right? We would say he was a Jew, and obviously the Muslims say he was a Muslim. But anyway, the point is that that's pretty amazing. That's pretty big influence, you know. It's pretty special. Yeah.
Thank you.
Interesting. Very
Yeah.
interesting morning.
But it's all alluded to in the Torah. And it says, you will be the father of many nations. He is. Quite literally. That they aspire. It's the one thing that no one argues on, right? The Muslims don't argue about Avram. They argue about Yitzchak and Ishmael, which one was the, you know, which one was sent away and which one wasn't. But no, there's no argument about Avram's role. It's amazing, you know. There we go. Right. Oh, we started late and finished early. That's quite impressive.
You would think that